I don't really know how to start shows.
Come on now, don't start liking me now.
So yeah, I'm funny compared to, well, you'll see later. I stand for mayhem!
I know a lot of idiots who think a lot of is mean-spirited just because it goes against what they believe. But the relief of comedy is to take things that aren't funny and it allows us to laugh about them for an hour.
We got a purple suit to buy and a gigantic coffin.
Why are you laughing?
Evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Why You Laughing, a History of Comedy podcast. And today, I am pleased to introduce to you Daniel Tosh, people pleaser, and my guest who requested this episode, the great Austin Ingalls. What's up, Austin?
Thank you for having me. How are we doing today?
Glad to have you. We had you on the Blind Mike project a few weeks ago, but this is
Yes.
a more formal introduction. It's not the chaos of the Blind Mike project. We take things seriously here, so I hope you're
I
ready.
appreciate you having me again. I had a lot of fun.
If we have a guest, I usually say to them, ideally, we would talk about someone or something that like influenced you or had an impact on you. And
Yep.
Austin Ingalls threw out a couple names: Daniel Tosh and Anthony Jeselnik, who I assume you're a fan of both.
Yeah,
And,
both of those guys are, I would say, my comedy. Those were what started my biggest influences, I would say.
I figured after last week with the Shane Gillis episode, the Anthony Jeselnik wound was a little fresh. So I wanted to go with Daniel Tosh because that's a name that a lot of people requested in general, whether it's his specials or just his life. People have said, do a Daniel Tosh episode. I think because there's a lot of mystery around him. The reason a Daniel Tosh episode would be tough and why I went with one of his specials is because he's a mysterious guy. Like, no one knows a lot about him. He doesn't do interviews. He puts out, a special every 6 years or something. I think he had Completely Serious in 2007, Happy Thoughts in 2011, this in 2016.
2015, I think, was People Pleaser.
2015, and
Yeah,
then
2015, yep.
and then that's it. Like that's all of his content out there. I mean, there's 10 million episodes of Tosh.0,
And
but
now his new podcast, Tosh Show. It's hard
and
to say.
I've noticed on that he's gotten a little more personal, like to the extent where you hear about his wife and kids and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe he's opening up a little bit, but like there's not a lot of information about the guy out there. Very mysterious.
No, I think that's kept his allure and mystique. It's what makes everyone talk about him still, because they don't know about him and he doesn't access everything like every other celebrity does. Jeselnik is kind of that same way too. Jeselnik doesn't really, give his personal life up much.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I think it's a smart approach because like Colin Quinn has said that we now live in a world where people are looking to get you in trouble for everything you say, and also we record all of our thoughts every single day and put them online.
Yeah.
So I think Tosh is smart because he has this sort of he's a rare breed in comedy where he's got an ego, like he's a cocky, kind of arrogant guy, or at least comes off that way on stage. And I think if he were doing, and that's why his podcast is interesting as he gets maybe a little more personal. It's like, can he keep that persona up? Because I imagine that's tough to maintain outside of a stand-up act.
I love his rants where he like shits on rich people, even though he's been rich for over 15 years. He's been wildly rich, but he makes it somehow still feel relatable. And even though he's taking the side of the asshole, like you said,
yes,
but he's making it likable. He was the first guy to. Well, I was like probably in junior high when Tosh started, so I was the perfect demographic for that.
Right.
So I've grown up just with him, in my life.
Yeah, and we'll give some examples of all of that. But first, Austin, tell the people where they can find you, for God's sake. If they want to hear more podcasts where your audio is terrible and there's police in the background, where could they find something like that, Austin?
There is police in the background for sure. I live in the fucking ghetto, dude. I am on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, everything. Just go to Austin Ingalls, Ingels. Go to my YouTube. Get them subs up. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get monetized.
If you're watching this on YouTube, go search Austin Ingalls, subscribe to the boy, check out his videos. He puts stand-up clips up, so check all of that out. Make sure you support Austin, and then if you'd be so kind, support this program. Go to blindmike.net. All of our links are there. You can find us wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Play, particularly YouTube is where what the kids are using these days. So subscribe on YouTube, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. And then if you want to support the podcast even further, if you want early access to episodes, if you wish you saw this last week, then become a Patreon or YouTube member. You also get bonus content if you subscribe. So consider doing that. And all those links are at blindmike.net. So we appreciate you checking that out. All right, let's get into it. Because it's interesting. I feel like that you said, it's interesting you said Tosh and Jezelnik, because I feel like those guys are kind of paired together a lot in the sense that, they came up in the same era, kind of both on Comedy Central with Jezelnik doing the roast and all that as well. But also like their attitude where inherently comedians are almost always self-deprecating, and it's very difficult to get the audience on your side if you're an asshole. But I think Tosh and Jezelnik are two guys that have figured out how to perfectly do it.
Yeah, they structure jokes very similarly too. And just to save the chat the time, this came out in 2016, so you don't have to tell us. We got.
Oh, it is 2016. Okay, and he recorded it in 2015. I think it says.
I knew I was right, but I was being polite to our guest.
Thanks, buddy.
I don't like to flex too much.
You should have flexed. It does say 2015 though on the special, so
probably recorded in 2015. Yeah.
Recorded in 2015. Yeah.
But you know what? This is where what's interesting about this is this is where Comedy Central lost such a lead over Netflix and YouTube, where they had an in with comics like this, like guys like Tosh.
Everyone.
That's where people wanted to be, was Comedy Central, and they just bungled on demand and online so badly, where they tried to make it exclusive and difficult to get for people. And the famous story that we've mentioned on here before is that Norm Macdonald's Comedy Central special aired during an hour on Earth Day, where it was promoted to turn off your televisions. And so then, if you want to see it, you have to hopefully catch it at a rerun at 2 a.m. on Comedy Central or whatever.
Yeah,
so,
do you remember that app when it came out? When they started it, how horrible it was?
It was very bad. Yeah,
it was terrible.
And they just allowed Netflix to catch up to them. The networks in general were very arrogant, thinking it's a pain in the ass to use these apps, so we have a lead on them. They're going to want to go to HBO or Comedy Central, and that's where Netflix pounced. And then really, I think YouTube has kind of overtaken Netflix in a lot of ways, as far as just being able to get out to as many eyes as possible. I think there are definitely more people watching certain specials on YouTube than are on Netflix, but. This was on Comedy Central in 2016, so let's get into it, right? Starting with Daniel Tosh's opener.
Thank you.
You skip the butthole surfer, the song.
What's that?
The entrance of that special has the butthole surfer song. Classic.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, I just had
you're good.
I
I get nervous about getting demonetized, so we didn't play it.
Good call. Good call. Yeah, it plays a lot of that song.
Yeah.
Thank you. Believe it or not, that gets old. It is great to be here in America. The greatest country in the world. If you haven't traveled a lot. Do we have to constantly scream we're number one? It's always the people who live in the most boring parts of this country that scream the loudest. People in Kansas, we're the greatest country in the world. It's do you guys have internet there? You ever seen a photo of Fiji? I've never been to Fiji, but I've seen photos. It looks pretty amazing. It's hard to think we're better than that. We're top 10. Maybe if we started screaming that every day, maybe terrorists would stop trying to saw our heads off. We're top 10. And they'd be like, that's fair.
But right out of the gate, he comes out and, to a standing ovation, obviously. And he says, hey, believe it or not, that gets old. So right out of the gate, he's being like a prick. But for whatever reason, his delivery, the way he carries himself, you get that he's joking. You kind of want to be in on it. And then he's similar to Bill Burr in the sense that he takes a stance that, like, at first you want to disagree with, but then he kind of convinces you why he's right. But I think the difference with him and Burr is Burr's approach is, hey, hear me out. Hold on. I know you're going to think this is crazy, but hear me out. Whereas Daniel Tosh's approach is more, shut the fuck up and listen to me, you know?
Right.
Next, we have talking about diversity.
I love the whole America thing. Like, that was only in 2016 we loved our country so much. Now it's can't say the same.
Yeah, that's a good point. This was like right on the 2 years later. If he recorded this, it would have been
2
like, "What are
years
you talking
later,
about?"
he would have not led with that line.
No one would know what he was talking about.
No.
That's not a thing here. No one's proud to be an American.
They're actually nervous to say they're from here.
Yeah. All right, let's hear about
I
diversity.
do love this country. We're the only place with any diversity. The entire planet's segregated. You realize that when you watch international sports. Like, I was trying to watch the World Cup, despite hating it. I get it, soccer is the most popular sport on the planet. That's because half the world can't afford AC. And that's about how long you have to run just to get tired enough to fall asleep in these godforsaken countries. You ever try to gamble on soccer? What's the over-under? 0.5? How much time's left? It's a secret. I'm out.
I'm out.
But we have diversity other teams don't. Or if you look at the Olympics, you look at our U.S. gymnastics squad. We have an Asian girl, a white girl, a black girl. Look at the Chinese squad. Any guesses?
Oh, that's so good.
Did you guess exclusively Chinese bitches? Yeah, that's all that's ever been on that team. That's all that will ever be on that team. And they wonder why they're not getting golds anymore. Well, you better get a Harlem in China. You think snapping together iPads all day is tough?
I feel like Tosh is kind of a bridge between like someone like Seinfeld or Gary Shandling, maybe, where like he's very observational. And maybe this is similar to what we said about Louis C.K. But between guys like that, like Shandling and Seinfeld or Regan or whoever, and someone like Louis, who's doing more social commentary, Tosh is somewhere in the middle where like he's kind of a joke writer, kind of just like riffing on topics.
Yeah, his riffs have punches. Like
yes.
I don't. It's hard to describe because like him and Jesselnick are so like you said, they both have similar dark, obviously joke writing, but Jesselnick is more of the one-liner structure but Tosh feels like it's rant almost, but it's not.
Tosh's style is a little more unique. It's harder to come up with a comparison where Jesselnick is so much darker than these guys, but clearly was influenced by Mitch Hedberg, Stephen Wright, guys like that.
Stephen Wright, big one, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like where it's a clear setup, total misdirect punchline, you know? Whereas Tosh is not really like that. It's harder to find a direct comparison. But like I said, I think if you kind of combine someone like Mitch Hedberg and Louis, you get Tosh somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, that's a good merger, if you will.
We can't talk about America without touching slavery. That's for sure.
Certainly not. So this is the balls of Tosh right out of the gate. He gets into like, fuck America. Let's talk about slavery. Let's talk about the Chinese soccer team. I didn't even realize that. Yeah.
Yeah,
like right out of the gate, he comes out swinging, and this is like it's interesting with guys like this because the famous Damon Wayans story is that he would come out and do like once he got really famous, he would come out at the Comedy Store or something and do his most offensive material to try and dig himself a hole. So people stop thinking, oh, hey, this is Damon Wayans. You know, you kind of like lose that mystique a little bit.
Yeah, I think you have to do that when you're known because like someone like me, I can't go up there and I can't say maybe my 3 best jokes or some of my darkest jokes. I can't go up there and lead with that because no one knows who I am. They're going to be like, who the fuck is this guy?
Right.
I mean, I'm already, the Jesselnick and Tosh thing. I already got to I'm already working against me with the way I look. So, you know what I mean? It's just, it plays into that. And I love the balls on that to lead with your darkest shit and dig yourself in a hole. That's unreal.
Yeah. So let's hear about slavery. Oh no, what were you going to say?
No, but you can do that when you're Damon Wayans. So
Right.
yeah.
This is a tough joke to do as a white comedian, but here goes. Because where this country is now, from where we came from, is pretty remarkable. There's nothing more shameful in our country's past than slavery. Okay, that's horrible. But I've grown up in a generation where I've idolized black people my entire life. They are better at everything. So the fact that we pulled off slavery, I've already said it's awful. That's off the table. I'm just saying it's kind of neat. I mean, at any point, they could have been like, we can just run away, right? And you will never catch us. And if you do, we will beat the living shit out of you. That's about how well that joke should go over. There's a fine line between appreciating the sarcasm and, ooh, this feels like a rally.
I'll tell you a couple things there that Tosh is great at. First of all, it's a very smart way to preface that kind of joke by saying, like, hey, black people are better than us at everything. Because you're kind of thinking, like, why would we be offended by this? You know, that's the PC way to approach this. And then you're like, oh, fuck, I see what he's doing. It's a pro-slavery joke. But one thing that's always bothered me, are you familiar with Jimmy Carr, Austin?
Of course. Yep.
So I like Jimmy Carr. I think he's got a lot of great jokes, and I think he's got a lot of like corny jokes or shit that I saw.
He's got a lot
Reddit
of like,
years ago.
they're almost like old timey street jokes. It's like, dude, that's not an original joke. Like
Right.
for every 3 original jokes he has, he's got like a couple, like you said, that are like, I think that's a Reddit joke. Like,
yeah, street jokes is a good way to put it. But my biggest problem with Jimmy Carr is he's very funny, and then almost takes away from that by saying, if you were offended by that, buckle up.
Yeah.
Because I feel, and then delivers kind of a mundane joke, and it almost gets in the way of how funny he is or how shocking, offensive he is. Tosh has figured out how to do that correctly. Where he's saying, like, hey, you're not going to like this, but then delivers on how offensive it is because it's a completely original approach. Like the idea, hey, black people are better at us than everything, so how did we pull off slavery is, to me, a completely unique thought. Like, holy shit, how did he come up with that? So him saying, like, hey, guys, you're not going to like this, it actually fits there. Whereas I think with someone like Jimmy Carr, you're like, don't warn me and then not deliver on it, you know?
Right, that makes sense. And is there anybody arguably in 2016 at this time bigger? This is one of the reasons why I wanted to pick this special than Tosh right now. Like, he's at the height of his powers, I think.
In 2016 for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this is when his show was super popular too.
Yeah, it's like right before all the streaming thing, like you said earlier, before Comedy Central essentially shit the bed.
Yeah.
This was
and
right
that's what's
around
interesting.
That time.
That's what's interesting about Tosh and the way he's carried himself and crafted his persona is that he was able to do it. Like, I think the reason you're seeing such a comedy boom now with everyone from like Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer, Shane Gillis, all these people, even like Sam Morril, Mark Normand, all these guys, is because of their podcasts, you feel a connection to them. So even before you see their stand-up, you're like, oh, I know this guy and I like him. I like his personality. Tosh was able to do it in an old school way, and like again, I know he had his show, but that's not it's not a personal show. He's watching YouTube videos, you know. So he was able to do it without anyone having any real background on who he is. Like, I'm basing this off of information he's given out on this podcast. In this special, he references dating, whereas I think he's married in real life at this time. So he doesn't give you anything about his personal life really, and is still able to build an audience that way and have you feel like you know the guy, you know.
Now, I don't know why he segued to this, but next we have him talking about unemployment.
Oh, all right.
This I wanted to get to this. I feel like this and Happy Thoughts, he overlaps this joke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. If you watch Happy Thoughts, he talks about unemployment in that.
Too. Oh, let's hear it and talk about it.
Yeah.
I wish a president would have the balls to say what I'm about to. 10% of Americans don't deserve jobs. Good night. Like, that's a number I can get my head around. Of course, there's exceptions to that. That's not who we're talking about. But if you don't think 10% of Americans are lazy pieces of shit, then you have never traveled anywhere. Because the number that blows me away is that over 90% of Americans have jobs. Who the fuck is hiring, you morons? Because I wouldn't. The sense of entitlement, everyone thinks they deserve more than they have. No one's content. Young kids, I won't even talk to them anymore because you parents have done such a bang-up job. If I meet one more kid and ask him what he wants to do when he gets older, and he replies, "I'll be famous like you," I'm gonna kick him in his teeth. You're never gonna be famous. Never. You have no chance. I didn't get here because I work hard. I have a gift from God.
I gotta say though, that's even where there is, as much as he comes off as like arrogant, there is a little bit of self-deprecation, because while he's saying I have a gift from God, he's also saying like I'm kind of lazy, like I don't do anything, I'm just lucky, you know.
Yeah.
So there is still, even through his arrogance, like some relatability to him, you know. But
Yep.
what is the remind me of the Happy Thoughts where that overlaps?
That might not be the one. There's another. I might have got ahead of myself, but yeah, there's a part where he talks about. It's actually, I think, the joke after this one. So my bad on jumping the gun on that.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, such an interesting, and that's where like I think of like someone like Louis C.K., where such an interesting thought to have. People talk about unemployment rate, and in this special, at least, he references that it was like 6% at the time or something.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact figures, but you don't think of it for whatever reason. Just something as simple as reversing those numbers and making you think like 90% of you people are employed is such a funny observation. Like the numbers are right there in front of you, but you don't think of it in that way. And that's where he does remind me more of an observational comic than you would think on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But next we have him talking about fertility.
Okay, yeah.
Here we go.
This is another example of kind of that Jimmy Carr thing, but he delivers on it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
The reason so many people in this country keep having litters of children are all these fertility drugs. You're not gonna like this joke, heads up. Know that if you have to take a ton of fertility drugs to get pregnant, that is God just saying you'd be an awful parent. Yeah, maybe if you weren't such a cunt in your 30s, you'd be a mother in your 40s. Let's be clear, I don't want to do that joke. Do that joke. Because statistically, that will ruin at least 2 people's night this evening. And for some horrible reason, which I can't explain, that brings me joy. To know that there's a lady here right now just going, fuck him.
Fuck you.
I deserve a family too. No, you don't.
Oh, love it, dude.
So perfectly done. But again, like there's a little hint of self-deprecation where he's like, for some horrible reason that gives me joy. But he is so harsh in that joke. Like to say if you weren't such a cunt in your 30s.
Yeah, to say that some women don't deserve babies, it's
there's an amazing thing, and I think this is where a lot of I'm sure you see it plenty, Austin, like younger comics and shit get lost where they're like, oh, I want to be like Daniel Tosh or Louis C.K. I'll just go out and call a woman a cunt. And it's like you're not realizing what the art is behind that. That in itself is not the humor. You have to craft it in a way where even the woman he's talking about is like, I kind of get what he's saying.
Yeah.
You know?
even the women that want to have babies that can't, they're gonna like this joke somehow. They're gonna find the humor in it.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of young comics that's lost on them. Hell, it took me. I'm still obviously trying to get there, but I have more of a grasp of it. But yeah, dude, a lot of when people start, they want to be the shock humor guy, and it's miserable.
Yeah, I think you see that a lot on things like Kill Tony, where people go up and you have a minute to impress a comic like Tony Hinchcliffe and whoever his guests are. So you think, that, oh, you know what I'll say? I'll say something crazy about black people like that. It's try and tackle some taboo subject, but there's no thought behind it. It doesn't make anyone think. It's just like, oh, well, that's something I wouldn't say at a party, I guess. So you were shocking, but there's no, it doesn't provoke any thought really.
I feel like open mics are 90% people calling people cunts and white people trying to shoehorn the N-word into their set. That's basically what it is.
But here's the thing I worry about, Austin, with like now everyone puts shit on Instagram and TikTok and all of that. What I worry about is like exposing your stuff too early, because I bet if you watch Daniel Tosh's open mics, there was an element of that where it's just like, hey, if I call this lady a cunt, it's funny, and then he kind of figured himself out,
Yeah, I agree. I worry about that too when I throw stuff up, and like, am I putting this out too early? Am I giving up too much content? But I don't know. It's a double-edged sword because you want people to see you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the way things are going, and it's how you build an audience now. So it's like smart to do. But there is something to the way like how Tosh does it, or Dave Attell, where there's some mystery behind these guys.
Yeah. Yep.
There's
or
a
a Bobby
mystique.
Lee. Yep.
Yeah, even Bobby Lee, where there's literally he doesn't have any material out there.
I can't name one Bobby Lee joke.
I know he pulls out his penis, and I only know that from stories. But
yep.
But
yep, I know we're going to see him naked. Yep.
Back in the day, even guys who did it all the time, like Rickles and Dangerfield, were on the Tonight Show 10 million times.
Yeah.
You saw them for 15 minutes at 11:45 at night once in a while, and those were like the most exposed guys. Where it's like now popular comedians, every detail of their life, so there is no mystique, and Tosh has done a good job, at least so far, of kind of keeping that up.
But he softens his material here. He's moving.
What's that? All right, go ahead, Craig.
I think we lost him. We'll play and see if he refreshes.
All right.
This is him talking about Make-A-Wish.
Oh, okay.
True. I work with Make-A-Wish all the time. That's an incredible experience. For me, not the kids that are dying. Yeah. They chose to hang out with me. They knew what kind of jokes I told. They were okay with it. I don't pander on stage, and I certainly don't pander off stage. And I'm telling you, honestly, these dying kids have the best sense of humor on this planet. Their parents, not so much. But I don't care. As soon as I meet them, I start giving it to them. Like, you sure you're dying? You know this is my weekend, right? I'm like, I'm dying. Like, all right, let's go. Don't cough on me, motherfucker. They want to be teased like anybody else. They can handle it. Trust me, they've handled a lot worse. This kid I was hanging out with last year a bunch was 17. I'm like, this is awesome that you're dying now. You got this in right under the wire. If you don't know, the organization is 18 and under. So if you're dying of cancer at 19, they're like, hope your dreams are cheap. If you're laughing right now, it's because you're a good person. And you realize how absurd that statement is, to think that they draw a hard line. But it's funny to think they might be holding their doors shut. You can't get in, kid. You're too old. And they don't even have to hold tight because the kids are so weak. Because the disease is winning. Don't feel bad for this kid. The first thing he said when he met me was, he told me I was his third choice. And to this day, I don't know if he was fucking kidding or not.
Such a good way, by the way. And something we haven't mentioned yet, it's coming up, I think, is that so this was done after Daniel Tosh's controversial rape joke. We talked about it a lot in the Jamie Kilstein episode, where Jamie Kilstein kind of ended up getting canceled in a weird way because of that whole controversy.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, Daniel Tosh made a rape joke. Someone in the audience complained, and he made another rape joke. Essentially, wouldn't it be funny if this lady got raped? And that was blogged about out of context and everything, and it was something that Daniel had to apologize for to keep his Comedy Central gig. And the reason I'm mentioning that now is even in this bit, you start to hear his contempt for the backlash of that, of people not understanding that these are jokes and they're absurd and ridiculous. When he says, like, these Make-A-Wish kids get what I'm doing, that's essentially saying, like, hey, these kids are a fan of mine. They're dying. They're going through something horrible, and they were able to understand it. So don't be phony and pretend you're offended for them by this joke.
Right. Yeah, Austin froze out, so we're just waiting for him to join back. But next we have nothing funny about blank.
Okay, so this is actually where he addresses it. So, like I said, in around this time, this was early cancel culture, if you want to call it that. I mean, we've shown examples before of cancel culture, but this is where it starts to get interesting because Daniel Tosh made comments about this recently, and it seems like maybe his views have changed over the years because you can tell it definitely did frustrate him at the time.
That's a perfect gauge for if we would ever hang out in a social setting. Know that if you've ever said any form of this statement, we would not. There's nothing funny about blank. Any form of that, know that I hate you to your core. Because I, along with some of you, respectfully disagree. You can accept that things are tragic and awful and still have a sense of humor about them. It doesn't make you a bad person, despite what some blog may say. Oh, there's nothing funny about AIDS. There's nothing funny about rape. Yes, there is. If you write a good joke, there's funny things about it. And some of you may be aware, I took a ton of bad press for making that statement verbatim. And then a woman screamed at me, there is nothing funny about rape. And I've never defended myself publicly, despite misquotes, mainly because I'm rich. I'm like, fuck it. I make my living saying shocking things. There's consequences. I can accept that. And people wrote me horrible stuff. Like, hope your daughter gets raped one day and we'll see how funny you think it is. Well, first of all, she'd have to survive the abortion.
And that's pretty much as he's ever really addressed that, which is
I think that's my
very
favorite joke on the special.
It's great. And you know what was crazy to me is when we originally discussed which special to do, I kind of clicked around. I was like, People Pleaser is the one where he addresses it, right? And I went to the end to try and find it because I assumed it was his closer. And I was like, oh, fuck, he just throws this out like 20 minutes in, very casually, like, hey. Now, if it was a lot of other comedians, I think it would have been their closing 15 minutes, this whole controversy.
Like with Chris Rock did with the Will Smith thing.
Yeah, very similar. Now, obviously, this incident wasn't as big as the Chris Rock thing, but like to Tasha's fans, it was. You know, like they cared about it just as much.
It seems like people still think that like Tosh is canceled because of that moment. And like, no, he released a whole special after and was on the air for another 10 years.
Well, you know what's interesting, though, Austin, is I don't know if you heard, we talked about it a couple months ago where it came up, the topic of cancel culture came up on Tasha's podcast. And he said in that, like, I actually think cancel culture is essentially kind of a good thing because it means people evolve and grow over time. Right? I'm sorry, not a good thing, but like it doesn't exist really. And he pointed to himself saying, like, look what happened to me. I was totally fine. Now, my thing with that is, like, I think it is a bad thing because I think it prohibits younger guys from trying to be the next Daniel Tosh or the next Gilbert Gottfried or Tracy Morgan or other people who got in trouble for jokes around this time. You're not going to experiment as much. You know what I mean? Like, sure, Daniel Tosh catches a lot of shit. He still makes millions of dollars. He's totally fine. But the next guy who's going to make a joke similar to what Daniel Tosh just did won't, because he's like, oh, I'm not Daniel Tosh. I can't get away with that. So I do think it kind of quells people's creativity. But what's interesting there is that I didn't realize that was his perspective kind of at the time, where he's like, hey, there's consequences for things you do. I came out of it fine. It's no big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it also like weaponizes the turquoise hair people against anyone they don't like.
Sure, but I do think I didn't realize how consistent he's been about that, where that was kind of his approach at the time, like, hey, just move on. And I actually think it's kind of cool that he threw it in 20 minutes in. He made an abortion joke about it and then just kept going, where, like I said, I think that would have been a core chunk of a lot of guys' material. And much like we talked about with Shane Gillis last week, where Shane didn't let it change what he was doing. He didn't double down and become a super right-leaning guy. He didn't try to appease people and become a super left-leaning guy. And I think that's true of Tosh as well. Now, I haven't seen really any of his stand-up material since People Pleaser, so I don't know what his stand-up is like these days, but I don't get the vibe that he changed who he was, particularly based on these jokes that he wrote after that controversy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he's going to get into like the soft material for the audience and talk about child molestation.
Yeah, good. Right after that. And this is how he kind of proves who he is, rather than addressing the thing head on and making people focus on what the controversy was. He's like, hey, I'm still making these jokes, so come at me if you want.
There's nothing funny about child molestation. All right, then don't hang out with me. Yeah, because if you tell me a funny joke about a priest diddling a boy, I'm not gonna be like, what is wrong with you? Don't you know how serious that issue is? I'm gonna laugh because I'm not 11 or Catholic. I don't give a fuck. I can separate between reality and jokes. Who in here at one point in their life hasn't laughed at a Michael Jackson pedophile joke? Let's see if you laugh at this one. Did you know last year, dead, Michael Jackson made $180 million thanks to his new show in Vegas, which is amazing if you get a chance to see it. There's a hologram of Michael. It sings and dances the hits, and for an extra $500 a pop, you can go backstage and watch him try to ghost fuck your kid.
It is. There was a thing like years after this, and it kind of reminds you, like, Andrew Schultz and Dave Chappelle both had Michael Jackson jokes in their specials like a couple years ago. And it's crazy how much of a time-honored tradition this was. Like 15 years after the guy's dead, people are still making Michael Jackson jokes and using like the documentaries that came out as like an avenue for it. But that is a pretty original one, I think. The idea of his hologram being in the news.
hologram fucking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like Michael Jackson's like a 9/11. It's like timeless. You're always going to hear a different take on it.
Yeah, but credit to Tosh for 20 minutes into his special throwing out the idea that there was backlash over a joke and immediately going into abortion and child molestation material.
Yeah. First of all, she'd have to survive an abortion.
And he's not done. He's going to talk about Jerry Sandusky here.
Yep.
Oh, good. Oh, you know what? This is credit to Daniel Tosh, because this should be on every comedian's. It should be like now when you see someone open with a COVID joke.
Yeah.
This is the Jerry Sandusky interview with Bob Costas. To me, is one of the craziest pieces of material that I've ever watched on television, and not enough comics covered it. I didn't think so. I'm glad Tosh made a joke about it here.
Yeah.
I'll laugh at the real thing from time to time. How about when Sandusky was asked point blank on national television if he's sexually attracted to boys? And he waited around 16 seconds to reply, and I quote, if you don't think I was at home pissing myself, like, whoa, did he just waffle on that softball question? Ask me if I'm sexually attracted to kids. I'm not. That's how long you should wait to answer that question. You don't mull it over for a bit. You certainly don't eyeball your lawyer. I wonder how he wants me to answer this one. You come out swinging in a hurry or you deserve to burn in hell. He said the only thing he's ever been guilty of is he liked to put his hand on boys' legs. I've heard enough. On that alone, you should be in jail forever. You want to hug your son longer than 3 seconds, you should be in jail forever. My dad didn't hug me very much. He wasn't the best father, but he didn't fuck children, and I'll take it.
Yeah, so to keep comparing the two, like, I think Jeselnik might be a better joke writer than Tosh, but like the attitude that Tosh created around himself, where he could kind of riff on topics in a way where before he even gets to his punchline, you're laughing because of his attitude. Like, the persona that he built is pretty impressive. And like I said, there's not a ton in comedy that I can think to compare it to.
No, yeah, and I didn't like Jeselnik at first because I was a big Tosh guy. So I was like, who's this fucking guy? He's taking all of Tosh's shit, because I didn't understand comedy at the time, that they were two different joke writers because they're doing similar topics. So I just thought Jeselnik was, ripping Tosh off.
Yeah, yeah, they're compared a lot, but they are very different. If you
very
break it
different
down.
styles,
like, their styles
very
are
different.
very different. Like, their attitude is similar, but they're very different guys.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's because I said they had similar style. I think it's the attitude is what I meant earlier.
Yeah. Well, because there are so few guys that are good at being cocky on stage.
An asshole,
you know what
cocky
I mean?
asshole, and they're both good-looking dudes, but good-looking white guys. So
Yeah, like
they lean into that.
The only other like great I can think of would be Dice. Like Dice is clearly like the cocky asshole on stage.
Yep.
But I'm trying to think of other guys.
Jimmy
that are
Carr is a
great.
cocky asshole, like you said earlier.
Yeah, that's true. Yep, that's a good one.
Yeah, but he's cocky. Like my joke's about to wipe you guys out of here.
Right.
Right. He's not.
And then he delivers like a B joke. It's like, oh, all right.
Right. But even with Jimmy Carr, there's not an air of I'm better than you people the way Tosh does. Like Seinfeld said something when we reviewed Seinfeld's philosophy on comedy. He said something I really disagree with, where he said that, the reason the stage is higher is because you're supposed to be above the audience, basically, is what he said. And I really wholeheartedly disagree with that, but I do think there are exceptions, and I think Tosh is a great example of an exception, where it's like he's put himself above the audience, and that's what you're looking to hear. Similarly to it's like how you would want Rickles to roast you, you know? If you're any ethnicity, you would want Rickles to make fun of that. It's like Tosh you would want to be insulted by in a way.
Yeah, the stage definitely isn't propped up so the people in the back can see. That's not why.
Well, Seinfeld gets very high-minded about these things, as we discussed.
Next, we have him talking about texting while driving.
Okay.
Don't text and drive. It's the law. Yeah, way to fast-track the big issues in this country. Do you know what you are allowed to do? Write a letter longhand while driving. Completely legal. I would argue just as dangerous, if not more. Do I have to be a martyr for this issue? I'll do it. Get on the freeway, like, dear grandma, it's been a while. Winter is coming. A couple dozen people like, oh no, we should make writing letters illegal too. Can't we use common sense? No, we have to spend millions of taxpayer dollars passing laws. Have you seen the campaign to stop texting and driving where they show you real final text? Be right. Like, was it worth it? I don't know. Were you trying to get laid at 3 a.m? Bet you. Maybe it was. Maybe you finally had sex with that one person you've been chasing your entire life, and you can't wait to text your buddy, you're never going to believe who I am. And then boom. Congratulations, you went out on top. Yeah, I promise you life wasn't going to get better after that moment. Best case scenario, 6 months from now, you're sending her text. Yeah, Thai food's fine, whatever.
There's so many layers to that joke that it starts with texting and driving and just ends with how miserable a relationship is. But what's interesting that, like, again, where I talk about the combination of styles is like he goes on this long riff about the subject, but at its core, like, you're not allowed to text and drive, so I write letters longhand feels like a Hedberg or a Stephen Wright joke. Like, it is just an observation. Saying that's completely legal is just it's good observational comedy that he's turned into a long riff.
Yep. And so he opens the special talking about America. He's gonna dip his toe into Canada here.
Oh, good. Yeah. So we're getting later in the special here. I did notice as I was pulling clips that I think like the first 40 minutes of People Pleaser is as tight as any special I've seen. Like, it's tremendous.
I agree. I forgot how good it was. I was like, God damn, dude, this still holds up to this day.
Yeah. That's the thing is, it's like with a lot of, if you go back and watch Hedberg's stuff, it's like a lot of jokes you've heard so many times, or you've seen other people do that kind of style where it doesn't necessarily hold up as well. Like with Tosh, I think it holds up perfectly because he has that element of social commentary also. The last 20 minutes are still good, but I don't think it's quite as tight as the first 40. But I think that's what we're entering here, basically, when he starts talking about Canada.
Did we miss? There's an abortion tag where he goes, "It's my joke, my choice." I don't know if you guys have known this, but Mark Norman has taken that tag.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if he did it in his special, but I've seen him live twice, and I've heard him say that tag, and I didn't even realize that was a Tosh tag.
Norman has a lot of little quirks like that where, like, I don't think he's even necessarily stealing jokes.
I don't think he knows. He just is. He's such a machine and joke machine that he's like, oh, there's a tag there. Gotta add that. Gotta add that. Gotta have that. It's like, holy fuck, Norman.
there's a lot of stuff like that with Normand where it's like the way his mind works with association, like that seems like perfect Mark Normand parallel thinking, where it's like you're looking for a pun or something like that to throw in there. It seems like the perfect type of thing for him to come up with. You know what I mean? Like if the timing lined up and you told me Mark Normand wrote that joke for him, it would be like, yeah, obviously.
Right.
Canada has the greatest fence ever built. America. It is foolproof if you can afford it. Really easy to be the cool, open-minded hippie country when there's a Kevlar Snuggie of America draped around your fat, frozen asses, daring to talk shit. We don't use our military. We know. We got you taken care of. Go back to bed. We'll wake you when the NHL playoffs start.
Yeah, it's just so good because you start with the arrogance of like, I'm sorry, not the arrogance, the point of like America's not that great. Like we say it's better than it is, and then towards the end you're kind of like, yeah, but we're pretty fucking awesome, you know. Like you come back around just to fuck with Canada a little bit.
It's easy. It's like a redhead, Canada.
Yeah.
Is he Canadian?
Tosh? I don't think so. I thought he was from
I think
California, but I could be wrong. Oh, you know what? No, he is from. He talks about he mentions Miami a couple times. Yeah, he is from Miami.
Miami.
Yeah, but here we have him talking about airports. Classic.
Right, this is a little more standard.
Some of you too young to remember pre-9/11 airport drop-offs, but they were the worst. Your girlfriend's like, "Can you give me a ride to the airport?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'd love to," because there's never been a service invented that would take you to the airport. What time's your flight? 4:15 a.m.? Perfect. No, I was going to get up at 2 anyway, so that works out. No, you know me, 2 o'clock rolls around and my body's like, "Start your day, it's 2. And you're driving the airport, say, "You going to come inside?" Yeah. Why wouldn't I? Parking there's so convenient. Besides, I like to start every day with a 2-mile stress-filled sprint walk. Oh, your flight's delayed an hour and a half? Perfect. I'll get a Cinnabon, get diabetes before you take off. Do you remember? Some guys wouldn't even leave after they boarded. They would just stand at a window waving at a machine backing up because they were so happy to finally be alone. Now what do you get to do thanks to Osama? Barely slow down and kick them to the curb. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I say that's worth a tower. Not two. Whoa, that was close. No, rightfully so. I fucking thought he meant both of them.
Now that joke starts, by the way, I didn't include all of it because it's just the whole thing is very long. But it starts with him saying, "Now hear me out. Here's why I think Bin Laden did some good things," basically. And then he gets into what you would otherwise like. The premise of that is like a Brian Regan joke. Like the idea of him talking about how airports used to be. That feels like a clean, 90s comedy set. And then it ends with a brilliant 9/11 joke. The idea that it's worth a tower.
Not 2.
No, that'd be ridiculous.
Next, we have a career suicide note.
Yeah, so this is he's basically saying that when he does want to end his career, this is what he'll do.
If I can take a quick moment to be sincere, and then I'll go back to being an asshole. Know that I appreciate this. That this isn't lost on me. I didn't have dreams of grandeur getting into comedy. It's overwhelming. Thank you for coming out. I know that eventually this will come to a crashing halt. I'm not going to stop saying awful things. Eventually I'll say the one thing where it's like, "Oh, there goes his career." Wow, you thought you could say that, huh? I actually wrote a career suicide note. Would you like to hear it? Dear Jews. That's all I've got so far. But it's, right now, people are like, "Oh, fuck, he's doing it. Here we go. Got
it." Perfectly very quick punchline because you think it's about to be like this long bit that he takes you on, and he's just like, no. It's a quick Jewish joke.
Still holds up to this day because of Kanye.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
We got 2 left here.
Yeah, we're coming to a quick end. This is the LeBron joke, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where like he takes angles. The Bill Burr comparison I used was basically that Burr would take like a social issue and be like, that wouldn't be popular and be like, hey, hear me out. Daniel Tosh is kind of just he's doing that, but like for assholes, like for arrogant people, and kind of making you understand their side. So he talks about LeBron James here.
That's how bad Cleveland. You can take a newborn baby on stage in Cleveland, Ohio, douse it in gasoline, light it on fire, and punt it into the crowd. And they will be less offended than if you go, well, I see why LeBron left this shithole. Which is all I said to start the show. And it ruined it. Like they literally were like, we're not going to laugh anymore. Like, well, I'm not going to give you your money back. I don't know. Oh no, I burnt this market. Let's just put it in perspective for you. They crucified this kid for leaving. You forget he was a kid because he looked 40 when he was 8. But he left when he was a 25-year-old billionaire. And he's not even from Cleveland. He's from Akron. That's a shittier city. 90 miles away. And wait for it, he's from the shitty part of this shittier city. And he just wanted to play basketball someplace else, and they killed him. I grew up on a private golf course in Florida. If I had $1 billion when I was 25 years old, I would shit on the stage mid-set. Just shit, stare at you people. Continue my act like, hey, pick that up. You're like, what? Pick that up. So what'd you say? And then I throw $1 million at your head. And you'd be like, damn it, I'm picking this up, aren't I? I would be out of my mind.
And then he goes on to talk about Justin Bieber also, who at that time, this is like, pissing in a mop bucket Justin Bieber.
Yeah, the roast of Bieber was around this time.
Yeah, so he's taking the angle of like, hey, these people that you guys shit on, like they're also human beings. They got very rich, very young. Like he, in his way, makes you kind of understand their perspective. Like he takes the side of what would be an asshole, and you're like, ah, shit, that's true. Like, you know, while he is making you laugh, you're just like, there's a point to what he's saying, I guess. Because you also have to remember this is still a time that people fucking hated LeBron. Yeah,
and he makes it perfectly. LeBron was 25 years old when everyone crucified him, dude. That is
I forgot when I was grabbing this clip. I totally forgot. I was like, in my mind, he was just in his 30s. I didn't realize that.
Right, LeBron has been in his 30s for like 20 years. Honestly, it seems like it.
Yeah.
Does it not?
Well, that's the thing, though, is he was 25, but he was already playing for 7 years.
He was already a veteran. Yeah.
So we get to the closer here, which is by far his longest bit. Interesting approach to kind of end with his longest chunk here at the end. But this is
great story.
This is the second half of the story. This is his second example that he uses.
Okay.
Now, here's a time more recently that I had road rage. I think I handled things a little more maturely. Again, I was in Los Angeles. I was on the 10 freeway eastbound, middle lane. Don't know what that says about my personality, but that's where you'll find me. I'm not an aggressive driver. Drive a station wagon. I was doing nothing wrong. I saw a car changing lanes, driving like a maniac, cutting people off. He was coming toward me. He wanted me to get out of the way. I chose not to. I'm like, fuck it, slam into me. He didn't, but he got on my bumper and he was irritated. He was flipping me off. I noticed he has a wedding ring on and his wife's in the front seat. And at that moment, I got real confident. Because I'm like, there's no way you're going to go to the level of crazy that I'm about to. Not with your wife sitting next to you. Like at some point, she's going to have to be the voice of reason. Like, stop it, Philip, just drive. I'm scared. So I got real brave, right? I'm flipping them off. I'm brake checking. I'm holding the windshield wiper fluid on. Like, is that your move? Yeah, a very passive aggressive. I've cleared my calendar. I'm doing nothing for the rest of my life except irritating this asshole behind me. We're going about 10 miles an hour on the freeway at this point, and he won't pass me. I kind of respect it. I'm out of fluid. My exit's coming up, so I get off the freeway, and then he follows me right off the freeway. And at that moment, the real Daniel came crashing back, where I'm like, oh, shit. You were supposed to keep driving. That's not your wife. That's a hooker. You're going to murder, isn't it? Like, you got to think fast. What do? Well, I know this exit. It's Robertson exit if you want to verify it. There's a very large black homeless guy at the bottom with a sign that just said food. I aggressively drove toward him with this guy right on my bumper, slammed on my brakes to a dead stop, so he's pinned behind me, can't get around. I roll my window down. I give the guy $20. I say, you need to go crazy on the car behind me. He doesn't even hesitate. Both hands on the hood, cocks his head, starts screaming at the guy. Meanwhile, I'm like, oh shit, he's gonna murder him too. Now I got blood on my hands, but I don't really care because it's a homeless guy. I'm like, it's probably not even the worst decision he's made today. And the driver shoots me one last look, and I appreciate it because he certainly didn't have to. But he gave me the, you won. And I've never felt better about anything I've ever done in my entire life. You know, for the rest of his life, every time he gets in the car with his wife, she's gonna be like, you remember the one time with the homeless guy? Maybe I should drive. That's all I'm saying, hothead. So remember that next time you lose your cool behind the wheel. Calm down. Find a homeless person, pay them to do it for you. Way safer, and you feel good about yourself. And the only part of that story I embellished even the slightest bit was the amount of money that I gave him. Because if you think I'm giving out 20s, you're fucking crazier than he was. Thank you very much. Good night.
Excellent.
A very funny way to end that. Also, I'm noticing Steve Renazizi has a similar bit that I've heard where he gives a homeless guy $20 to dump a bucket of something into the sunroof. I forget what it is, but it is kind of similar.
Is that the dude that made up the 9/11 story, right?
Yes. Yeah, sure is.
So he probably stole the joke.
Or did it come out
Maybe, yeah, I
first?
didn't think of it that way. Maybe.
Steve
Yeah,
Renner,
which
he
came
had a
out first?
special. Yeah, I don't know when the last time he put anything out was.
I don't know. So I found Steve Renazizi's stand up the same way I found a lot of guys around this time actually, through Pandora. Like I would just go to Louis C.K. Pandora, and a bunch of different guys came up. That's how I found like Mulaney, Hannibal Buress, guys like that. But Steve Renazizi's bits would come up a lot. So I don't know if it was a special or an album, but that's not what we're here to talk about. The point is,
Sorry.
that was me that did that. Don't apologize, Austin. Have some confidence. Austin apologized for me going on a rant about something.
Sorry, guys.
Don't beat yourself up. No, so what's interesting there is like he has this style throughout essentially the entire special. And the last, 5 or 7 minutes is these two stories about road rage that he tells. So it's interesting to kind of switch up the entire format of the special in the last few minutes and still deliver and have it be a hilarious long form story.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like what Jeselnik did with the fire in the maternity ward abortion joke. Like it's that long 15-minute joke to close out his set.
Yeah, it is an interesting way to do it. I imagine too, when you're building an hour like that, it does get difficult to have if you're like, just a setup punchline kind of a guy. Like I said, Tosh is not exactly that, but sort of. I imagine it does get exhausting to have to fill an hour with that. You know what I mean? Like for Mitch Hedberg to fill an hour, you have to write 60 jokes.
Yeah, I just did a headlining set last night, and I probably told over 100. I tell like one-liners, and like more Justin. Like I probably told over 100 jokes to get to the 40 minutes that I did.
Yeah, like that's a tremendous amount of writing. So I imagine they get to the end of their special and are like, well, "I'm going to throw a story in here, kill some time."
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about Daniel Tosh, people pleaser, before we get out of here, Austin?
No, I'm glad we picked this one.
I am too. You talked me out of it actually, because I had mentioned Happy Thoughts, and you were like, "I've seen People Pleaser more." And then when I went back and watched it,
and then when I said that, I'm like, "Damn, have I seen that more?" Because this always played on Comedy Central. Like they had this on a loop. It seemed like forever.
Yeah. I think they did both of them. They played both of them a lot. But
yeah, I love the Happy Thoughts, that joke where he talks about putting the girl's head off on the roller coaster. That's a good one.
It is. Well, that's the thing with Tosh is similar to what we talked when we talked about Louis C.K.'s Shameless. Is there's an element of Tosh where some of his specials kind of overlap in the sense you're like, was that People Pleaser? Was that Happy Thoughts? Because they're both so solid. It's the same with Louis' first 3 specials where they're kind of interchangeable in a way because they're all almost the exact same quality.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, Steve Renazizi's Man-Child came out in 2013.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Thank you. I'm glad that got cleared up.
Just fact checking, right?
No, I appreciate it. So go follow Austin on all platforms. Instagram, YouTube, wherever you find the kids. Go look at his jokes, his reels, his shorts, all of that. But make sure you subscribe to his channel.
Thank you.
We like Austin here. And then go to blindmike.net. That's where I told you. You get all of our links as well. Support that. Support Craig and everything he does. That's verygoodshow.org. If you want to check out his true crime podcast, Rubbed Out. I've heard they do an episode once every 6 months.
Something like that.
Make sure you
similar
keep
to
an
my
eye out for that.
podcast, Craig.
I saw Austin, I think when he was on with us, he was like, yeah, I'm starting my podcast back up. His last episode was like 2 months ago.
I was gonna say I don't think we have even done an episode since then. But I was supposed to go to Austin after I got off the episode with you last time, and I was driving to my airport and it got canceled, so I didn't even get to go to Austin. So
God damn it. Well,
yeah, but thank you for having me, dude. Anytime you want to have me back on, I will gladly talk about any special with you. So,
all right, very good. Yeah, and subscribe to Austin so you can finally get to the comedy mothership, for God's sake. All right.
Yes, thank you, Craig. It was an honor to meet you, man.
You too, buddy.
Thank you, buddy. All right, guys, we will talk to you next time on
Thanks, guys.
Why Are You Laughing?
Zip it up and zip it out.